We have discussed Billy Napier, his play calling, and a possible offensive coordinator at length on this channel. And we finally have an answer straight from the head man himself on what the plans are there. Billy Napier got pretty pointed in his press conference yesterday, and I'm going to tell you what I'm hearing as well as my thoughts on what he said and what that means. Napier was asked pretty directly about play calling responsibilities and whether or not he's considered delegating those to somebody else this offseason. Here was his response.
Is there any conversation about giving up play calling duties for yourself and spreading that to somebody else, and maybe you can focus more attention elsewhere?
You know, I spoke about this briefly in preseason. You know, I think everything that we do is always being evaluated, right? And I think one of the things that's challenging as a leader when you have a core responsibility, if things in that area can be done better, you got to be able to tell yourself the truth, you know, if that makes sense. So, and I would tell you, I'm a lot more critical of myself than anybody on the outside is, right? So, you know, I've said it publicly. There's no sugarcoating this thing. You know, we have no excuse. We can coach better and we can play better, right? And I'm hopeful we will do that.
So you're still the play caller?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Now, before we go any further, I want to know what you guys think. Are you okay with kind of, trusting the process and giving Napier time? Or do you think he should delegate some of those responsibilities right now? Let me know in the comments. All right, let's talk a little bit about this statement. First, let's talk about the pros. So one pro is that he's not making changes just to make changes, right? He has a game plan in mind. He has a process that he wants to follow. He trusts it. He doesn't want to make a change just because he hears outside noise. He only wants to make a change because he thinks after he continually evaluates this, that a change is necessary. Currently, he believes that by sticking with his process, eventually what comes out on the other side will be good and will amount to wins at the University of Florida. And, I think that his confidence that he ultimately knows what it takes to be successful and that he will be successful is something that's important. You want a head coach with confidence. You want a head coach with a plan and that trusts the plan that he has in place. Something else that stood out to me, other than saying, that he's more critical of himself than everybody else, but he said, at the end of the day, you have to tell yourself the truth. And I think that line is important. I think that it tells us he knows this isn't going great. He knows people aren't happy. And obviously he knows that what he's doing isn't amounting to wins on Saturday. So I think the wheels are in motion in his head. I think that he is not planning on keeping this the status quo forever. And the other part of it is he does already take some input from staff. So I don't know that I think he has to officially delegate play calling responsibilities to somebody else to make tweaks within the program. I think that there is a great chance that there will be more guys involved in these conversations. At the end of the day, Napier's still going to be the play caller for the rest of the season. But there are guys on his staff that he can turn to, that he can get input from. And I think that could really help what's currently going on. Now let's talk about the cons of that statement. Does it show a lack of willingness to change? You do have two guys on your staff in Russ Callaway and Billy Gonzalez with offensive play calling experience. You could, in theory, call upon them to do the job and see if it makes a difference. He's clearly not doing that. He said he is going to be the play caller for the rest of the season. Does it show a lack of willingness to change? I don't know, because I don't know that you necessarily have to change the play caller to change the way that plays are being called, if that makes sense. But, it is something that gives you pause. And then the other thing is he responsible for too much? Billy Napier was hired to be the CEO of the University of Florida football program. He hired Napier's Army. There are more people on his staff than on any staff in college football across the country. Yet, he wears the hat as head coach, of offensive play caller, of passing game coordinator, of quarterbacks coach, really. I mean, he has major input on special teams. He does so many things, particularly on game day, has so many responsibilities that I think that there is a chance that you just can't be great at all of the hats if you are wearing too many of them. So, but it sounds like that hat wearing is going to continue for the rest of the season. So that might not be great. So where are we? The question is, was Tennessee a fluke offensively where Florida played well, put up points, had no problem moving the ball? Or was Utah and Charlotte and Kentucky the flukes, right? It's not even worth mentioning McNeese State because, Florida did well offensively, but that's like Florida playing a high school team and then us being excited that they did well offensively. So which one was the fluke? In his press conference yesterday, Napier mentioned that none of these questions were asked after Tennessee. Watch that clip.
We played good football at times. Some of these questions you're asking, you weren't asking a couple weeks ago. So ultimately, it is what it is, right? We have to deal with the result. So when we lose, we got to come in here every weekend and answer questions from the outside, right? So nothing's changed here. When we play well, we do what we're supposed to do. We coach well. We're capable of winning games,
And I think that's a fair point. But the problem is we've only seen one good offensive performance and then 3 bad ones. I already told you I'm not counting McNeese State either way. So is the one anomaly enough to counter the other 3? Now, ultimately, Napier and his staff know when stuff is on execution and when it's on play calling. They know what was called. They know what was practiced. They know what went into what we see on the field at the end of the day. So they know the answers to those questions that we have. He's constantly saying we have to coach better. But honestly, it's very nearly time where you need to put up or shut up. Will he hire an offensive coordinator? We're going to talk about that after we give some love to Prize Picks. Prize Picks is a daily fantasy game where you pair players and then select more or less than what their weekly projections are. The Vandy game could be the best offensive game that we see for the rest of the year. So I would jump on some of these right now. Use my code. It's PEEK, P-E-E-K, for a 100% deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is a ton of fun. So go check them out today. Prize Picks is the best way to have action on the game in states like Florida. And several of you guys have already signed up. And I've gotten word that some of you guys are making money over there. Go get on Prize Picks and use the code PEEK, P-E-E-K, today. All right, let's get back into this offensive coordinator business. I have it on pretty good authority that the pressure to hire an offensive coordinator from the athletic director's office and from the boosters is very strong, is going to continue to be very strong. I'm not saying mid-year, by the way. This is for the end of the season. The off season is when I think they will hire an offensive coordinator. And I do think it is Napier's decision, but I also think that the pressure from the powers that be are going to influence that decision. Essentially, he's got 2 choices: not hire an offensive coordinator and know that he is probably going to live or die by the results of year 3. Meaning, if there is no offensive improvement, his seat becomes scorching hot. And I know that I have talked and lots of people have talked about Napier getting time to build this thing the right way. But I think that the caveat to that is if there are 3 years of absolutely no offensive improvement, that doesn't bode well for there ever being offensive improvement. Napier has not had a problem being reflective on what worked and what didn't work in the offseason. We saw him put Corey Raymond in charge of the entire secondary. We saw him go out and get Austin Armstrong. But is he willing to be self-reflective? It's obviously a lot easier to be the CEO, to look around you and judge the work of others. But is he able to be self-reflective? He can't be above reproach. Think about this. Jimbo Fisher, who won a national title calling his own plays, was just forced to hire an offensive coordinator at A&M. If something isn't working, Napier needs to be self-reflective enough to realize it and make a change. But the flip side of that is if he hires an offensive coordinator, which I think he will, I think the clock sort of starts over. It's going to take time for the team to get used to a new play caller. And that, coupled with the fact that the 2024 schedule is absolutely bananas, I think that there could be some major grace given if an offensive coordinator is hired. And ultimately, I think that that's what happens this offseason. Whoever he hires is going to give us a pretty good idea of where his head is at on this whole thing. Does he go out and get one of the big names that we mentioned in our previous video, like Jeff Scott? Or does he promote from within, like Russ Callaway? Or maybe go out and get somebody else that's a real young up-and-comer from a group of 5 school or something. If he goes with the former, I think that that shows a willingness to completely allow control to go to the new offensive coordinator and for the system to be rebuilt in that offensive coordinator's likeness. Flip side, if he promotes Callaway or, somebody else that's a young up-and-comer, I think that that's kind of a sign that he will still maintain his system and at least some control on the offense. Honestly, either is an improvement from what we're doing right now, I think. I don't want to hear about coaching better. I want to see it. All right, I doubt we'll get many more questions towards Napier about the play calling. Everybody saw his reaction in the press conference yesterday. He was not too pumped about it. We will continue to watch and see what happens, but I'm going to give this subject a rest for a little while. We have a really cool video coming out tomorrow about some of the recruits that are killing it at the prep level this season. Make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss that. I appreciate y'all tuning in. Talk to you soon and go Gators.